we're going to be talking about the 10 biggest logistics companies.
10 biggest logistics companies.
The first one on our list is Nippon Express.
Nippon Express. So, as the name suggests, Nippon Express is a Japanese company, right? Back in the days, I remember when I joined the industry in the mid-90s and what have you. This is when the Japanese economy was going through gangbusters. You know, Nippon Express and Kintetsu and all that sort of stuff. They were massive. Why? Because this is when Japanese manufacturing was still very dominant and they did a lot of volume. Japanese freight forwarders were almost like untouchable. And in some regard, they probably still are today. Why? Because a lot of their business are Japanese companies. And Japanese companies always stick with Japanese forwarders. I remember once I walked into ASICS, right? Footwear, right? Japanese company. And I go there, talk to a Japanese guy, very polite, you know, nodding his head. Japanese always nodding their head. Whether they're saying yes or no, who knows, right? But they're nodding their head. And the guy was polite enough to sort of let me know at the end of the sales call, was like, look, that's corporate. We're never going to change from them. And I said, well, thank you, sir, for not wasting my time. At least I know. And this still rings true today.
Interesting. So is that loyalty to their
That's how they are. They stick together. Now, I know over the last few decades, that's somewhat being watered down a bit. I have come across Japanese companies who've sort of gone away to using others because of maybe there are some points of differences where a Japanese company just couldn't deliver, right? If they want to ship to a region of the world that a Japanese company is not well presented, they have to use those. So there will never be a perfect fit where any one individual company's wishes and wants can be met with another company.
Right.
So Nippon Express, the fact they're still in the top 10, that says a lot. But I don't often come across a lot of customers that uses Nippon Express. I think they have fallen from the grades for somewhat now, but they're still in the top 10.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see this top 10 list. Is it based on revenue? Is it based on volume? Is it, you know, what it's based on?
So from what it looks like, it's definitely based on revenue.
Okay, revenue.
But usually you'll find a correlation with volume as well for the most part.
An interesting point. Nippon Express, because they know there's certain customers that will always use them, their prices aren't going to be cheap. They don't sell on price. Not all the time. I know there's going to be exceptions where they're going to be competing, but generally speaking, they normally charge a bit of a premium. But it's important to note, Nippon Express has been known as Nippon Express since I joined the industry. Wow. So what that simply means they have remained their own brand name and not acquired another company to become another brand name. So I'm not sure whether they made any acquisitions. They might have, they might not. I don't know. So therefore, I'm going to punt and say they haven't been acquired by anyone else, or they have acquired anyone else of size for them to be anything outside of themselves.
So I guess we'll move on to one that you are very familiar with, C.H. Robinson.
They're number 9?
Yeah.
Okay. I do know a lot about CH. I planted their first flag here in Australia when I was the one-man show. I think 2008. If my memory serves me correctly. I essentially approached my boss at the time, which is Mark Hon, who was a regional director sitting in Hong Kong. And I said to him, I go, look, I want to work for you guys, and I think we can do great things in Australia. And Mark said to me, he goes, look, I don't have any plans in Australia. I just got this posting to look after Asia 6 months ago. Long story short, I eventually convinced him to take a chance on Australia when the global forwarding division of CHR was but almost in its infancy. It had only just been around for maybe less than a handful of years at that time. Because C.H. Robinson isn't really known as a global international freight forwarder. C.H. Robinson cut its teeth on being the largest domestic transport broker in the USA. So they're a non-asset provider. They don't run any assets. What they do is they basically tender shipments from their customers and trying to connect all of the truck drivers and trucking companies with the loads that they have. They're the freight forwarders of domestic transport.
Right, so very US focused.
US focused, just domestic transport, trucking, right? Trucking with a splash of intermodal. They like to say intermodal is important for them, but to be honest, it pales in comparison to their truck brokerage business. I had the pleasure of many, many years traveling to the US and going to all of the offices of international forwarding, which were invariably attached to a domestic office, and they're completely different environments. You've got the freight forwarding side, which is, you know, the international CNA, everybody's in their little cubicles, and whereas the domestic freight brokerage business was where the powerhouse was. Yeah. And I remember it was like, almost felt like a stock market-esque type of vibe. People were yelling across the room and loads, and there's whiteboards and there's bells, and it was just such a fast moving business model, which was far more exciting to me to witness than compared to the international side. Because, for them it was just fast moving. I've got 50 loads there, 10 loads there, 15 loads there. Who's got the trucks? I've got the trucks here. Yep. So it's literally like stock trading. And I go, now I understand what freight brokerage means. So all the loads you do, all the movements you do, you're not operating your own staff or own trucks. You're basically in the business and you're finding a supplier who physically carries it and you connect it to. That's freight brokering.
Right.
By and large, that's what international freight forwarders are. We don't own ships, we don't own airplanes. So on that regard, freight forwarders and freight brokerage on C.H. Robinson's model are identical, except one's international, one's domestic. So anyway, long story short, I put my hand up to start the Australian location for C.H. Robinson. And I was their first employee in Australia.
Wow.
And because I was the end-all or be-all for C.H. Robinson, I wrote the budget and then I basically had to go and manage the budget. All I can say is I treated that business like it was my own. And why did I do that? Because I hired an office that didn't have any windows. Right? Just to save costs. And I didn't really get my first employee until it was like 6 months later. Because I did everything myself. It wasn't until a bit later on when the network started recognizing the Australian office that they started sending a lot of the requests that had the confidence in us acquiring more Australian business, so to support the branch and what have you. But even then it was a struggle because I literally have to go to these managers meetings globally trying to sell Australia to my own people, right?
Yeah.
A lot of viewers would actually think, well, if I'm using a multinational, I automatically get all of the facilities and the nice and bells and whistles of the company globally. No, that's not true.
Wow. It's almost like its own companies in its ways. Each branch kind of
it's its own company,
its own entity.
So therefore, if I traded better with, say, my C.H. Robinson Singapore office compared to Malaysia office, where Singapore gives me more money, Singapore office is a bigger customer, internal customer.
Interesting.
So therefore, if Malaysia comes to ask me something, push comes to shove, I'm going to look after Singapore better because they're paying me more bills of mine than Malaysia is, for example. You are who you are based on the size of who you are. That's one thing. Both externally and internally, especially for the type of size of clients that Australia has. By and large, we don't do a lot, and therefore we don't matter a lot, right?
Very important to note. So number 8, CEVA Logistics. CEVA Logistics.
CEVA is a good quality company, I say. I haven't heard enough bad negatives about them from the people that we approach, we talk to, or we associate with. Like any other big companies, they'll have the big company doldrums, like, communication might be an issue, processes might be a bit cumbersome, but that happens with any company. As you grow bigger, it is hard to manage.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not necessarily these companies are bad. It's just because sometimes they can get a bit too big and too convoluted and too messy for them to operate efficiently as a unit.
Right.
It's easier to control 2 people than it is 20. Then it is 200, then it is 2,000. I don't have anything bad to say because I do know they have a very, very good business, especially in Australia, and which is car carrying. They move your cars from A to B, so interstate or have you. That's a quality company because their prices are generally quite competitive and the service generally delivered are quite efficient. We've used them for our customers. I've used them myself. Outside of the international stuff, I personally haven't had much experience with. But keeping in mind, CEVA hasn't always been known as CEVA. CEVA is a conglomerate of previous purchases, right? Which will be a running theme, I would suspect, going to a lot of these examples. Even C.H. Robinson, a lot of these companies are in that list because they bought someone else.
Interesting.
Right, they bought someone else.
Well, the next one is pretty much exactly what you said. We actually have a video on this one. DSV, which acquired DB Schenker.
DSV has been making a lot of noise. Obviously, prior to them making all the acquisitions, DSV is but a very small name back in those days.
Right.
Through the various acquisitions, especially DB Schenker, they've grew to this size. I'm a strong believer as an international freight forwarder, our usefulness quickly deteriorates once we go past a certain size. What we do as a logistics provider, we're a service provider. It needs to be seamless. It needs to be end-to-end. It needs to be making sure whatever we do should be the most efficient efficient for our customer
Exactly.
every step along the way, so that we can get our customers' product to market faster.
Yeah, with as little steps as possible.
You just got to make everything so seamless.
Yeah.
But companies like DSV, who's acquired one large company after another, after another, after another, these things rarely translate to anything positive. And what else? When you acquire someone, you generally go through a time of integration. Whose system to use? Who will hold this position? So generally speaking, when you're having these sort of acquisition, on the desk level, branch level, country level, it's really good for productivity. Forget about efficiency. You're going to get none. Somebody's going to be made redundant, right? Something's going to get chopped, because companies of this size, they no longer care about the daily job anymore.
Yeah.
For them, it's all about how do I make sure to help my company's share price continue to go up.
Exactly.
Or at least not go down.
And this is the teething process that you've talked about before, where like, especially as soon as an acquisition happens, this is like the worst time to have that company looking after
because
both
sides will be demoralized.
Yeah, exactly.
Both sides will be demoralized.
Yeah.
Because somebody, somewhere, someone is going. While the people who's handling the work is in limbo, what's going to happen to people's shipments? It's not going to be going smoothly.
Exactly. It's going to be getting lost,
right?
Lost in the noise.
So if I was an investor of any kind, I would not be investing in any logistics company of that size and magnitude. Not in a million years, because that's throwing good money after bad. And this is where you see a lot of clients being lost, profit margins getting completely screwed down. It's a disaster.
An interesting analogy, it sounds like, is like when a star gets too big and keeps growing, it
going to explode.
Well, I guess we'll move on to number 6, Kuehne+Nagel.
Kuehne+Nagel, good company, great company. I've always went up hand in hand against them. I'm envious of them. This is like the Joker looking at the Batman, goes, where does he get those wonderful toys? They're massive in ocean freight. They've got great individuals working for them in Asia, purely because they've got a great reputation. They have a lot of multinational clients and contracts that's been with them for a long time. You have to respect them because they've just been fighting on their own accord. And every time I've gone up against them, I always made a very hungry salesperson on the other end. I'm not sure about the actual processes. I'm not sure about their systems, but I do know they attract some good talent. The only reason why I know they're good talent is when I go up against them, that other person is as active as I am.
Interesting. And that's a pretty rare thing in your industry.
Well, either they're remunerated very well, or they've been sold a really good story to make them feel passionate. And sure, Kuehne+Nagel's been around for a long time. They're a multinational company. They're
1,300 locations. Apparently.
There you go. So they are like, I would call Kuehne+Nagel like the unknown DHL type of speak, right? I respect them a hell of a lot. But that again doesn't mean everybody should just go right now, knock down their door and say, let's use Kuehne+Nagel. No, because more often than not, you're knocking on their door, they actually don't want your business. Because if you don't have 1,000 something, they don't really care. And even if somebody sits in front of you, tell you that they do, it's only because that salesperson hasn't made his numbers for the month for him to get his commission check, and he's hungry. Right. So he wants to get you into the factory so he can earn money from you. Are they going to mean something strategically to the average Australian client? Absolutely not, because the same issue continues.
Yeah. What are you going to answer? A mouse knocking on a door or a giant knocking on a door? You're not going to hear the mouse. Yeah.
You're not going to hear the mouse, right? We have taken many customers from Kuehne+Nagel, and I will say they have taken business from me personally as well. We can do the job better. I know that. Hands down, I know we can. But what we can't do is we can't afford to buy a business. What do I mean by that? Is that I can't afford to go make no margin for an extended period of time. Whereas these larger customers, if I bark on the wrong tree and I knock on one of their clients, which they really want to keep, they know this. And they have enough deeper pockets for them to go, oh, so La Chang's knocking on our door. Okay, guess what? Go $200 under cost. And let's see how long La Chang lasts. Whilst you might get that price incentive for the short term because there is competition, eventually, as they're scared of the competition like me, to really trying to give you a different experience in moving your freight efficiently, they want you because they've saved you an extra $200. Eventually, they're going to come back and go, hey, remember that free lunch I gave you? Time to pay up.
Right.
Because ultimately, these are still bona fide profitable businesses.